Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabados of Delmer, together with my co-host Mark Rona, Just Statewide News Service, and jbiztextvalley.com.
Well, Rabbi, education is very important to the people in the Jewish community, and with us today we have the Executive Director of the New York State School Boards Association, Tim Kremer. So welcome to the Jewish View once again. You were here last year, so welcome back.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Rabbi, for having
There's
me.
always more education. You're saying
Yeah.
there's something new in
We're always
education.
learning,
Yes,
Just maybe start off from the basics of what is your job as a school board association.
Okay. Well, we are an organization that is a statewide membership organization. There are approximately 720 boards of education in this state, and about 90% of them are members of our organization. We have one office located in Latham, New York, which is just north of the Capitol. Have about 55, 56 people on staff, and we have a group that is centered around advocacy work, lawyers and lobbyists. We have a whole information group that publishes information, puts a lot of stuff on internet, electronic communications. We have a large media relations presence, do a lot of research and marketing. We have a training group. We have everything from a large annual convention down to individual school board retreats. We'll do about 85 of those a year. And then we have a group of consultants who work on a variety, a mishmash of different things on behalf of boards of education. Our job primarily is to see to it that these people who were elected locally to govern these public education institutions have the information and the training and the skills that they need to make smart local decisions. We don't want to tell them necessarily what the decision always is, but we want to make sure they have everything they need, everything they need to be equipped to make smart local decisions.
And how long have you been in your position?
I've been in my position almost 17 years. Yeah.
Time flies. I remember your predecessor, Lou Grummett, right?
Lou Grummett was my predecessor years ago, and in fact, when he was here in New York as executive director, I was in Ohio, and I was almost 20 years with the Ohio School Board Association. So I'm coming up, I think, on my 36th anniversary in this business.
You started when you were 3 or 4? Or?
I'd like to think that.
Like we've had, again, Mark and I have many either politicians or their local officials. And one of the things that they do say is getting someone on the school board is very difficult because it's no pay and it's a lot of work, a lot of effort. And I mean, what kind of quality people are there? It's just like, PTA, I'm a parent, I'd like to see my school board, and they probably don't have any education background.
Yeah.
And skills, so then you're starting from scratch. Here's some raw person that's obviously a good person. They want to volunteer. They want to help.
Yep.
But what do they know about how to run any school system?
So recruiting candidates for the school boards. Do you do a class in that, or?
We don't actually ourselves recruit, but we do give people advice as to what they might be looking for in a school board member.
Like a class of
what we've learned through kind of our research is that a lot of people, if you tap them on the shoulder and you say, hey, you know what, you might be good at this, like 3/4 of the time, people say, okay, I'll give it a shot. Now they do have to run, and they might not win. But we come from all walks of life. There are a lot of people who are actually professional educators, be they teachers or school administrators, who are also on school boards. And you can't be on the school board where you actually work, but you can be on the school board in the community down the road from where you do work. So that exists. There are a lot of people who are related to people who are in school boards, who work in the school district. So they're on the school board, and somebody within their family works within the school district. And that sometimes causes us a little bit of anxiety now and then.
That's how you get to know the inside of what's happening when you can't be undercover boss and you can't go see what they're doing.
Right.
You just have to, you have someone on the inside telling you.
We do get a little of that, and then we do have the people who, as you suggest, this is all new to them. They don't have a professional background in public education at all. And actually, that diversity at the table is really our strength. I want to have a school board that represents the community as far and wide as we can. If we all looked exactly alike, thought like exactly alike, believe the same things, came from the same neighborhood, were approximately the same age, the same gender. Honestly, I don't think we would have that diversity that we need in order to properly represent a diverse community.
So let me ask you about the makeup of the state legislature. Assemblywoman Pat Fahey used to be a school board member.
Correct.
Former Senator Sia Kachik, she was from the Schenectady County area. She was a school board member. Do you have people besides Pat Fahey who are currently in the state legislature who used to be school board
John
members?
DeFrancisco, who is a Republican senator from Syracuse, used to be on the Syracuse Board of Education. Brian Kolb, who is the Assembly Minority Leader,
Right.
Republican from Canandaigua, former school
That's
board
when
member.
they had one-room schoolhouses back then.
Hey,
When
hey,
he was
hey,
on the
you said
school
that,
board.
not me.
I know that, because they've been in the legislature 35, 40 years.
They've been around
so-
a long time, and interestingly enough, Comptroller DiNapoli
Yes.
was a school board member from Mineola, and he was elected to the school board when he was 18 years old.
Okay, so, but are there any more relevant or closely
You
aligned?
just
school-
named
That was it, it's Pat Fahey.
Pat Fahey.
That's
Assembly
it.
would, no, you're catching me a little cold
All
here.
right.
I mean, I'd have to
I
think
figured
about
you'd
it.
have a list, I think.
No, I don't have a
Okay,
list,
okay.
but it is interesting when I do go meet with people at the Capitol. I oftentimes learn for the first time myself that. So
Oh,
he said,
really?
I once was on the school board,
Someone's
or
gotta do
my
research
father, or
for
my
you
mother,
before
or somebody. Well, it's one of those things that doesn't necessarily come up.
But like you say, it's almost the thankless job. I mean, so sometimes when you say that you tap someone on the shoulder, they're running unopposed.
Well, not necessarily. That varies dramatically.
Yeah.
You will have districts where you are running unopposed, an incumbent continues on without any opposition. We've even had situations where we didn't have enough candidates for the number of open seats, but that's unusual.
Okay.
Typically, you do have opposition. There are more candidates than open seats. And, I hear people oftentimes refer to school board members as either volunteers and the thankless job. And I have to tell you, I would like to correct the record.
Okay.
These are elected officials. In fact, they're the largest body of elected
Right.
officials in the state. And they volunteer their time,
Right.
significant amount of time.
Right.
But they're elected officials. They're not volunteers, number one. And number two,
They're unpaid.
they would tell you
They're unpaid elected officials.
they're unpaid elected officials, but I think which I think adds to the purity of our mission.
Right.
But the other thing I would tell you is I don't think it's a thankless job.
Okay.
I hear from them all the time, and many of them who run again and again and again would tell you this is the best thing I've ever done. I love my community. I believe in public education. I believe I'm giving back in an appropriate, honorable way.
And it's in their heart and soul. And that's
It
why
is.
they
And
feel
you-
like it's not thankless,
You
because
think
it's
about
in their
this.
heart and
You
soul.
think about this community, and the fact that you are trying to make sure that the children within this community have an opportunity to an education that's going to prepare them for whatever is next in life. That has huge meaning for a community,
Yes.
to the families that live in the community, the taxpayers in that community. It's very important work, and I think that once you get into it, and it's daunting at first, no doubt. You're kind of wondering, what did I get myself into? But I think it kind of grows on you, and I think most school board members would tell you that they are very happy they did
Okay.
that.
Teacher principal evaluations, that's been in the news lately.
Yeah.
Tell us what your association position is with that and what your feelings and thoughts are about that.
This whole thing came about when there was this new federal program called Race to the Top, and it said that you're going to have a way in which you link teacher and principal evaluations to standardized test scores of your students. That changed everything, and it was all linked to a Common Core curriculum and high-stakes standards and et cetera, and I won't bore you with all those details, but it became a very controversial thing. Every school district was forced to negotiate a new teacher and principal evaluation and have that submitted to the state for approval in a set period of time by a certain deadline, or they might jeopardize their state education aid. That was a whole complication unto itself. Well, today, there has been some pretty sharp criticism about the validity of those evaluations. You probably have seen where the Common Core aligned tests for English language arts and math that are administered to grades 3 through 8, on average, kids are proficient at, well, I'm going to say about 31%, pretty low.
Right.
But the teachers
That's right.
have a highly effective or effective rating somewhere in the mid-90s.
That's right.
And the governor has been very vocal about pointing out, how can this be?
Well,
Where
he
you have-
mentioned it in the State of the State.
He
message.
does, and he's continuing to. So now in his State of the State, where he's come forward with this package of reforms, he has suggested we got to completely do something different with this annual professional performance review, these teacher evaluations, because they're not credible.
And do you agree with that?
We agree that they need to be fixed.
But do you agree that they're not credible?
I do. I do believe that the system we have put together is one that is being kind of gamed. The link to the tests, that people have doubts about these tests, would tell you that that foundation is not very strong. These tests were created to measure student achievement, student progress. They were not necessarily created to evaluate teachers. And so they're being probably misused in that regard. The negotiated portion of the annual professional performance review, those were rushed. They were forced into play because of this rush to make sure you are eligible for your state aid, and I don't think they were given a thoughtful approach. And then you have this, what is 60% of the evaluation, which people have openly said we're not putting as much thought and time and effort into that. A, we might not have the time to do it because it's so time consuming. It requires 2 observations in every classroom, every teacher, very time consuming. Plus, I think they realize that it's going to be difficult to do this right and fair. And so I think they're gaming that 60% a little bit by being a little generous on that side of it, knowing that these test score sections of the APPR may not be positive.
Just, are you saying the Common Core could be, like you say, the evaluation of the teachers may be a little bit skewed, but on the other hand, maybe the Common Core is not the right kind of test. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, is it a proper test? I just know my mother was a kindergarten teacher, and she remembers that, you know, teachers have lunchroom and they talk and they said, well, they just gave us some test from somewhere, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but just to evaluate the kids and smart kids, you can get dejected. You know, you're
Yeah.
used to getting 90s and
Right.
100s, and now you don't know, here's a test, and you can't even figure out half the test.
Well-
She says, who wrote this test? You know, I mean, who came from it? So that's why I guess I'm always thinking, you know, maybe the test is a terrible test. Maybe they're not making it well.
They might, I don't know to what extent it's a terrible test, but your mother's reaction is not uncommon. It is, they changed the standards. They basically said that what our kids need to know and be able to do has to be more rigorous than what we've been doing to date. Whether you agree with that or not is the foundation of this whole Common Core debate. But if you go with the fact that these standards, these Common Core standards, are legitimate, and those are indeed the things we would hope our kids would know and be able to do at certain levels in their academic history, okay, fine. But what we did is we kind of rushed things through. We put these standards in place. We did not align them to the curriculum well. We did not make sure that the students and the teachers had the preparation to understand what these standards were all about.
The rollout was faulty.
The rollout was faulty. You then also had these evaluations done rapidly without clear understanding of what the curriculum was and how it aligned to the standards. And there were all these links done too rapidly. If they had rolled this out over a 3 or 4 or 5 year period of time, I think we would have been fine. But it was all done at once, and it caused this huge furor. The teachers in particular, and the New York State United Teachers specifically, really have been pushing back on this.
So they're on the opposite end of the spectrum from you, I guess.
Not really anymore. I mean, there was a time when I would say we were probably more supportive
Right.
of what was the reforms that were coming forward
Than they were.
than they were.
Okay.
But as we've gotten to this place today, we're starting to realize that the reforms as they were rolled out was not done well. We want to fix it. We don't want to throw them all out.
And NYSET
but we
agrees
want
with that too?
I would tell you they're on a different path.
Okay.
And their definition of fixing it, I'm sure, would differ from mine.
All right, so let me ask you about, that's for sure, about the 5-year probation for new teachers?
Yeah, this is another reform that the governor included in this package.
Right.
So he put forward his budget this year, and as you well know, he is here in New York. The governor has figured out that they put all sorts of policy initiatives and attach them to their budget, and the legislature is pretty much handcuffed into accepting
Right.
these policy initiatives. They can vote it up or down, but they don't have the ability to change it, except through some negotiations, all done behind closed doors. This is one of the elements that he put in here, is that I want to make sure that rather than us have a 3-year probationary period, which has been the tradition, that it be extended to 5 years. I would tell you that we would be supportive of that. We could see where there are instances where our teachers are not, we're not ready as a Board of Education to make a decision about a lifelong contract, tenure, on somebody who has been a teacher for only 3 years and maybe has done fair, but not outstanding. Maybe needs a little more time. Now, what the governor has also linked in here is he wants 5 consecutive effective evaluations linked in there.
That's how the teacher evaluation part connects with tenure.
So he said the 5-year probationary period, which made some sense to us, but then he's kind of taken it, he's doubling down
Yeah.
with you have to have 5 effective evaluations in order to get tenure. We're not, or other
Yeah.
rewards, certification and things like that. We're not sure if that's fair. I mean, you're going to have instances where, as a teacher, you may have a really good year, and then you might have a year that's not so good.
Right.
We all do. Particularly when you have children coming into your classroom, some of them can be very challenging.
Right.
And you're not always going to have these Lake Wobegon kids walking in every day. So there might be that kid or those sets of children who really challenge you. Other things can happen as well. So we are not as convinced that the 5-year consecutive evaluation is the way to go, but a 5-year probationary period for newly minted teachers, that makes some
Well,
sense.
I think we've seen a pattern with the governor's negotiations skills, and if he gets half a loaf, he says it's better than none, and if he didn't double down, he wouldn't have gotten the point, to the point where they're at, so he, shoots for the moon, and if he gets half, that's better than if he just proposed the half a loaf, and then he would have gotten only a quarter.
Well, you're very wise to say that. A lot of people whom I represent have been just fraught over the fact that he's gone forward with this very long list of education reforms, and he has said,
Well, he has
I
to
am going to give you X number of dollars in additional state aid if you don't accept all my reforms. If you do, I will reward you by giving you a much larger number in additional state aid. This is classic negotiations.
Yes,
and he does an extraordinarily good job at it.
And it's very good for him in that he can say, well, look, I'm a conciliator, I'm not I don't have a dictatorship type of mentality, and it's good for the school boards because you can go back to your people and say, look what we did.
I think
We-
he would
we
tell
were
you.
effective.
I think he would like to think of himself as a change agent.
Well, of course.
And he knows that the people who he is trying to influence oftentimes are intransient. It's hard to move these folks.
Yeah.
And so he's doing it, playing a hardball approach.
Right, right.
I understand why he's doing it. I think he kind of goes a little too far on some of these instances, but I assume you're right that at some point he'll back off some of this stuff and get the most important things that he
That's
wants.
right.
You've been around, like you say, for many years. Do you think that teachers are better qualified today? Do they need a master's? I mean, in the olden days, I don't know how far back, they
Yeah.
didn't need a master's.
Right,
So would
yeah.
you think they're better qualified to come into the classroom?
I think they're well qualified. It's interesting you ask that question because there has been research done that suggests that those teachers who have a master's degree, the students that they are teaching fare no better than those teachers that have just a bachelor's degree. There is some, I don't know if this is some groundbreaking study, but I have read that before. I would prefer that I have a very well-educated teacher. I like the fact that the teachers here in New York are expected to have a master's degree. Uh, it means that there is a significant commitment to their profession, ongoing professional development requirements. This is a profession that does change more rapidly than we want to give it credit for sometimes.
Wanted to ask you about an issue that's very important to the Jewish community and parochial schools, and public schools will benefit from this also, is the education tax credit.
Yeah.
Now, last year I asked the governor when he unveiled the budget and it got passed and he had the news conference, I said, well, what happened with this? He goes, well, just wasn't enough money in the budget for this. I didn't know it took money for a tax credit, but he's, was very short in his answer, so he didn't really explain what he meant by that. Are you, as an association, in favor of this education tax credit? Or no, you're not. Why is that?
Therein lies the rub, what the governor said. This is actually money that comes from the state to reimburse those who donate their funds to a private school, a charter school, or could be a public school. Our expectations are that the public schools, that is the sweetener put in there for people like me, that the likelihood of us attracting significant donations not going to be high in most communities in the state. There will be certainly some communities where they might have a foundation or they have some sort of other, and they have a citizenry of some means that does make donations to their public schools. That does exist today, and that would be welcome, I'm sure.
Naming rights for the school.
Yeah, we don't like that.
The Neil Goal of Linton High School.
But what our concern is there are going to be more incentives to take children out of public school, go to private school, which is a parent's right to do. Don't object to that at all. But now the state's going to subsidize that decision, and we don't believe that that is something that they should be doing. We have public schools. We provide a high-quality educational program. You want to send your child to a private school or a charter school, go for it, but you pay for it. Don't expect us to all subsidize you for that.
But they're also paying the school taxes, so they're also paying for the public schools as well as then the private schools. So shouldn't the burden be sort of minimized somehow, mitigated, where at least the tax credit, I mean, there's only so much you could take off on a tax credit. So,
well, it's high. That is what has been, I would tell you, is one of the main concerns. I mean, we fundamentally are not supportive of a tax credit, but then to make it such that it is either somewhere, the Senate passed one version, the governor is promoting another version, and they're between 75% and 90% of what I have donated is credited back to me. So this is a very high, very significant credit. If it was something that was smaller than that, it would be more tolerable.
More palatable, yeah.
Yeah, I would think.
Well, maybe that's negotiations. That's where it comes down to.
Well, it might be. We're not advocating for that. I'm not trying to cross that line, I would tell you. But one of the most egregious pieces of it is the amount of the credit itself.
Right, okay. So the East Ramapo School District, there seems to be a quandary going on there. Could you explain that a little bit?
Well, I would expect your viewers might know something about this. Here's a school district that
in Rockland County.
That has, I'm going to say, within the school district are approximately, and I'm just estimating now, about 27,000 students. Somewhere around 18 to 20 attend private yeshivas, and the rest go to public schools. Many of those children are either from Haitian or Hispanic, African American descent, those who attend the public school.
Oh, okay. I was going to say.
Yeah, not the yeshiva population. No, but you could see it's set up for some tension over race and religion and ethnicity. The school board that was elected by a majority of the people who live in that school district are either, I don't know what the breakdown is now, but I think out of 7 or 9 members, all but 2 are Orthodox or Hasidim. Okay? They have made some decisions, some policy decisions, some resource management decisions that have been called into question by the Commissioner of Education. And eventually the governor, and it became very tense. The commissioner kept saying, you're doing things wrong. They would say, we're not, and there was a lot of fighting back and forth. The governor finally stepped in and sent a gentleman named Hank Greenberg into the school district to do an investigation. Hank Greenberg came back and said that there needs to be a level of oversight put forward, a monitor, if you will, to monitor the decisions of the board and the superintendent. So that bill, a bill to do that, has now been introduced in both houses. You have Carlucci, who's an independent Democratic Conference senator. You have Ellen Jaffe.
Okay.
And Zembrowski's involved. I don't know where everybody.
Zembrowski,
Right. I don't know the numbers or anything like that in front of me, but that bill has been introduced that would provide for a monitor in East Ramapo only. It's not a statewide bill, just for them. There are some sunsetting provisions and things of that nature. We've taken a position of no objection, which is, this is a situation where somebody from the outside is going to come in and sit at the side of our board, an elected board, and decide whether or not they've made some smart decisions and has the power to override them.
Oh.
Now, we're giving some hope that maybe this is such a
new
it's such a highly charged situation that maybe having that person who comes in, I'm going to call it the adult in the room, who has high level of integrity, who is looking out for the best interests of all the children, who can provide smart recommendations.
Who pays this monitor?
The monitor's going to be paid for by the state.
Okay.
In theory, all of this is yet to be determined. This is a bill that has been proposed and introduced. It has not been passed yet.
Okay, but it's, does the governor's office support this? Is there?
I assume so. I couldn't tell you for sure, but the fact is it emulated what the governor's investigator, Hank Greenberg, had said they were looking for. So he probably has spoken out on this. I'm just forgetting of whether or not he has said, yes, that's what I wanted. Okay. But he may not have taken a position on this particular bill yet.
Hank Greenberg is an Albany resident, and he works at Greenberg Trowering. He's a managing partner. He's a member of Temple Israel. So I know who he is. Okay. I know who you're talking about. Yeah. And he was involved with the state fair also. And
well, his report came out, and people were pretty respectful of that report, and said, he did a thorough job. It's a credible recommendation and such. Interestingly, this bill, and one of our cues, the East Ramapo Board of Education is a member of mine.
Right.
So, I'm getting my cue here from my member, and my member was not stating an objection to this. Do they love the idea of having a monitor? No. I think what their hope is that eventually there will be additional resources that would accompany this.
Okay.
But that has not yet been determined.
Okay.
So, wrapping it up.
Do you have anything else that you want to add that we didn't touch on?
Just one more minute.
Okay. Well, I would tell you that the things we've talked about are very high on our list of key issues. The state budget is where we're at right now. And the one thing that has been most difficult for the boards whom I represent is that the governor did not release the runs, as we call them, estimates of how the state aid would be distributed. So we are putting together our budgets, our tax cap levies in the dark. And this is not fair. It's no way to run a railroad. But we are having to go forth despite this dramatic limitation.
In all the years, I've never heard of school runs not being put out there and then negotiated. It's just
it's bizarre. As part of this negotiating strategy that the governor, this very strong-armed negotiating strategy that the governor employs.
Wow. Okay, well, good luck.
Thank you.
All right,
Much
thanks
success.
very much, Tim, for being, Jewish education is, like Mark said at the beginning of the show, is so important to keep up the good work in educating the students of New York State.
And you do likewise. Thank
Okay.
you.
Much success.